Hi, I'm Maya. My sister turned my invitation to be her maid of honor into the most humiliating experience of my life, forcing me to stand there while she announced I was too unstable to handle the responsibility. What she didn't know was that I owned the venue where she was getting married, and I was about to show her what real instability looked like. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I should have seen it coming. Growing up in the shadow of my older sister Sophia had taught me to expect disappointment. But this was a masterclass in cruelty that even I wasn't prepared for. It started 6 months before her wedding when she called me with what I thought was the olive branch I'd been waiting for my entire life. "Maya, I want you to be my maid of honor," Sophia had said, her voice carrying that fake sweetness she'd perfected over the years. "I know we've had our differences, but family is family, right?" I remember sitting in my downtown Seattle office, looking out at the skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment our relationship could finally shift from toxic to something resembling sisterly love. How naive I was. The differences she mentioned were hardly just differences. They were 28 years of being treated like an inconvenience in my own family. While Sophia was crowned homecoming queen, I was building my first website in my bedroom. While she dated the quarterback, I was working 3 part-time jobs to pay for community college. While she got a full ride to USC because of Daddy's connections, I bootstrapped my way through state school with scholarships I earned through sheer determination. But the pattern was always the same. Sophia got the spotlight, the praise, the unconditional support. I got the lectures about being more like her, the comparisons that left me feeling like I was fundamentally flawed for wanting different things. When I started my first tech startup at 23, my parents called it a cute hobby. When Sophia got engaged to Bradley, a trust fund baby whose biggest accomplishment was inheriting 3 country clubs, they threw her an engagement party that cost more than most people's weddings. Still, when she called me about being her maid of honor, I said yes. Because despite everything, despite the years of feeling like a stranger in my own family, I wanted to believe that blood meant something. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, Sophia had grown enough to see me as more than just the disappointment of the family. The first red flag should have been the venue change. 2 weeks after asking me to be her maid of honor, Sophia called in a panic. "The Fairmont fell through," she wailed. "A pipe burst and flooded the ballroom. We need a new venue, and everything decent is booked. Bradley's parents are furious and I just don't know what to do." I listened to her sob for 20 minutes before offering what I thought was the perfect solution. "What about Cascade Gardens? It's that gorgeous venue in Bellevue with the glass conservatory and the waterfront views. I heard it's incredible." There was a pause on the other end. Too long a pause. "That place is booked solid for years in advance. Plus, it's way out of our budget." "Let me make some calls," I offered. "I have connections in the event industry. Maybe I can help." The truth was, I didn't just have connections at Cascade Gardens. I owned it. 3 years earlier, when my second startup sold for $15 million, I'd purchased the struggling venue and transformed it into Seattle's most exclusive wedding destination. It was my passion project, a place where I could create magical moments for couples who deserved their fairy tale. I hadn't told my family about the sale of my company or my real estate investments. After years of having my achievements minimized or ignored, I'd learned to keep my successes to myself. They still thought I was playing around with computers, as my father so dismissively put it. Let them think that. Their opinion had stopped mattering to me long ago, or so I told myself. Within an hour of Sophia's call, I'd arranged for Cascade Gardens to have a last-minute cancellation on her wedding date. I even negotiated a special discount that brought the price within their budget. When I called her back with the good news, she screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Maya, you're a lifesaver. How did you manage this? This is like a miracle." I smiled to myself, sitting in my penthouse apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. I guess I know the right people. What followed were 2 months of the most intensive wedding planning I'd ever been involved in. Sophia called me daily, sometimes multiple times, asking for my input on everything from centerpieces to catering. For the first time in our relationship, she seemed to value my opinion. She even started saying things like, "I'm so lucky to have a sister like you," and "I couldn't do this without you." I threw myself into the role with everything I had. I organized the bachelorette party in Napa Valley, complete with a private wine tour and a Michelin-starred dinner. I helped her find the perfect dress, spending entire weekends shopping in boutiques from Pioneer Square to Queen Anne. I even flew to Los Angeles to help coordinate her engagement photos with a celebrity photographer. Every task felt like a small investment in rebuilding our relationship. When she asked me to speak at the rehearsal dinner, I spent weeks crafting a speech about sisterhood and forgiveness. When she needed someone to handle the wedding favors because her wedding planner was overwhelmed, I personally oversaw the production of 200 custom gift boxes. But there were moments that should have warned me. Like when I overheard her on the phone with our cousin Jessica saying, "Maya's actually being helpful for once. Maybe all those years of being antisocial paid off. She's great at organizing." Or when she introduced me to Bradley's groomsmen as my sister, the computer nerd who never leaves her house. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Each comment stung, but I pushed the hurt aside. I was building something here. I was proving that I could be the sister she needed, that I was worthy of being included in this family that had never quite known what to do with me. The morning of the wedding, I arrived at Cascade Gardens at 6 a.m., 3 hours before the bridal party was supposed to be there. I walked through the gardens I'd spent years cultivating, checking every detail personally. The white roses were perfect, the string lights were positioned exactly right, and the conservatory gleamed like a crystal palace in the morning light. This was my gift to Sophia. Not just the venue, but the perfection of every detail. The head gardener, Marcus, greeted me with a coffee and a knowing smile. He was one of the few people who knew the truth about my ownership. "Everything looks incredible, Ms. Chen," he said. "Your sister's going to have the wedding of her dreams." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and nervousness. "I hope so, Marcus. I really hope so." By 10 a.m., the venue was bustling with activity. The catering team was setting up in the adjacent building, the florists were adding final touches to the ceremony arch, and the photography crew was testing lighting in the conservatory. I'd orchestrated hundreds of events at Cascade Gardens, but none had felt as personal as this one. Sophia arrived at 10:30 with the rest of the bridal party, looking radiant in a way that reminded me why she'd always been the golden child. Even without makeup and with her hair in a messy bun, she commanded attention in a way I never could. The bridesmaids, 3 sorority sisters from USC and our cousin Jessica, surrounded her like disciples around a goddess. "Maya!" she squealed when she saw me. "This place is even more beautiful than I remembered. Come here, you have to see the bridal suite." I followed her up the spiral staircase to the second floor of the main building, where the bridal suite overlooked the entire venue. It was my favorite room in the building, with its original hardwood floors, crystal chandelier, and panoramic windows facing the water. "God, this is perfect," Sophia breathed, spinning around in the center of the room. "How did you ever manage to get us this place?" I smiled mysteriously. "I told you, I know people." The next few hours passed in a blur of hair, makeup, champagne, and laughter. For moments at a time, I almost forgot about all the years of hurt and disappointment. Sophia actually seemed to enjoy my company, asking for my opinion on her lipstick color and laughing at my jokes about our childhood. But then, around 2 p.m., everything changed. I was helping zip up Sophia's dress, a stunning Vera Wang creation that cost more than most people's cars, when her phone rang. She glanced at it and her face lit up. "Oh, it's Aunt Patricia. I absolutely have to take this." She stepped away, leaving me holding the delicate fabric of her train. I couldn't help but overhear the conversation, especially when Sophia's voice got louder with excitement. "Aunt Patricia, I'm so glad you called. Yes, everything's perfect here at Cascade Gardens. Can you believe we actually got this venue? It's like the most exclusive place in Seattle." She paused, laughing at something her aunt said. "Oh, you want to know how we managed it? Well, let's just say having a sister who knows the right people has its advantages." My heart swelled a little. Maybe she was finally appreciating what I'd done for her. But then she continued, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a whisper. "Between you and me, I think Maya might have finally found something she's actually good at. Booking venues and organizing things. It's perfect for someone like her. You know, detail-oriented, but not really leadership material." The room felt like it was spinning. Detail-oriented, but not leadership material? I was a CEO of a tech company. I had 50 employees. I sat on 3 nonprofit boards. I'd been featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 3 years ago. But she wasn't done. "I mean, I love her. But you know how Maya is. She's never been the type to take charge of her own life, so it makes sense that she'd be good at helping other people with theirs. She's like the ultimate assistant." The ultimate assistant. I stood there, holding the train of her wedding dress, feeling like I was shrinking into myself. This was how she saw me. After everything, after all the effort I'd put in, after all the success I'd achieved in my life, I was still just the little sister who was good for organizing things. One of the bridesmaids, I think it was Ashley, noticed my face and shot me a sympathetic look. But I forced a smile and focused on the dress because that's what good assistants do. They swallow their feelings and get the job done. The ceremony was scheduled to start at 4 p.m. By 3:30, I had shepherded the entire bridal party downstairs and into position. Sophia looked absolutely stunning, every inch the perfect bride. Bradley, handsome in his custom tuxedo, was waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes. I took my place at the front of the procession, my bridesmaid dress carefully chosen to complement but not overshadow the bride's. The music began, and we started our walk down the aisle. The conservatory was packed with guests, the afternoon light filtering through the glass ceiling, creating an almost ethereal glow. Everything was perfect, exactly as I had planned it. But it was during the ceremony, as I stood at the altar watching my sister marry the love of her life, that I overheard the conversation that would change everything. Behind me, a woman whispered to her companion, "This venue is incredible. I heard they paid $300,000 just to rent it for the day." $300,000? I almost laughed. They'd paid $30,000, thanks to the special discount I'd arranged, but I kept my face serene, my hands folded properly, playing my part as the dutiful maid of honor. "I wonder who owns this place," the second woman whispered back. "It must be worth millions." 15 million, actually. I bought it for 12 and put 3 million into renovations, but they didn't need to know that. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. Sophia and Bradley exchanged vows that made half the guests cry. The photographer captured every moment perfectly. When they were pronounced husband and wife and shared their first kiss, I applauded with genuine happiness for my sister, despite everything. But during the cocktail hour, while the newlyweds were taking photos in the gardens, I overheard my mother talking to a group of her bridge club friends. "Oh yes, we're so proud of Sophia. She managed to book this exclusive venue all by herself. She's always been such a go-getter, so different from Maya." Maya's sweet, of course, but she's never had Sophia's ambition or social skills. I was standing right there, adjusting a floral arrangement that had shifted in the breeze. Right there, and my mother was talking about me like I wasn't in the room, like I was invisible. "Maya helped with the planning, didn't she?" one of the women asked. My mother waved dismissively. "Oh, Maya did some of the busy work. She's good at following directions. But Sophia's the one who made the big decisions, handled the important stuff. She's always been the leader in the family." I excused myself and walked to the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself. In the mirror, I looked at my reflection, the dutiful sister in her carefully chosen dress, the helpful daughter who'd spent 6 months of her life making this day perfect. What was I doing here? What was I trying to prove? That I was worthy of their love? That I deserved their respect? I was a successful businesswoman, a millionaire, the owner of the venue they were all so impressed by, and they still saw me as the auxiliary daughter, the helpful assistant, the one who was good at following directions. I splashed cold water on my face and took a deep breath. Just a few more hours, I told myself. Just make it through the reception, and then I could go home and pretend this day never happened. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. I was walking back toward the reception when I saw Sophia standing with a group of her sorority sisters, champagne glass in hand, gesturing animatedly. As I got closer, I heard her laugh, that bright musical laugh that had always been her signature. Honestly, can't believe how perfectly everything worked out. It's like the universe wanted me to have the perfect wedding. "The venue is unreal," one of her friends gushed. "How did you even find this place?" Sophia's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Well, I hate to throw my sister under the bus, but Maya actually had some connections. Turns out she knew someone who could get us in here. First time she's ever been useful for something other than tech support." The group laughed, and I felt something inside me crack. Not break, crack. Like a dam that's been holding back water for too long, and suddenly there's a fissure that threatens to bring the whole thing down. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Maya, Sophia continued, taking another sip of champagne. But let's be honest, she's always been a little, what's the word? Awkward? Antisocial? She's never really understood how to network or build relationships like normal people. So when she actually managed to help me get this place, I was shocked. "Didn't she start some kind of business?" another friend asked. Sophia laughed again. "She calls it a business. It's more like a hobby that makes some money. You know Maya. She's always been good with computers, but terrible with people. This wedding has actually been great for her. Gave her something real to focus on, and let's face it, planning events is probably more her speed than trying to run a company." I stood there, hidden behind a pillar, listening to my sister dissect my life and my character for the entertainment of her friends. Every word felt like a small knife, precise and sharp. Not because they were true, but because they revealed how fundamentally she misunderstood who I was, how fundamentally she didn't know me at all. But the worst part? I realized I'd spent my entire life trying to prove myself to people who were never going to see me. I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more palatable, hoping that if I just helped enough, if I just supported enough, if I just stayed in my lane enough, they might finally accept me as I was. Instead, I'd become exactly what they said I was. The helpful assistant, the tech support sister, the one who was good at following directions. Well, I thought to myself as I walked away from Sophia's laughter, maybe it was time to stop following directions. Maybe it was time to start giving them instead. The reception was in full swing by the time I made my way back to the main party. The band, a jazz quartet I'd personally recommended, was playing soft standards while guests enjoyed their dinner. I'd chosen every detail of this menu, working with the head chef for weeks to create a dining experience that would be unforgettable. I watched from the edge of the dance floor as my parents proudly introduced Sophia and Bradley to various family friends. My father, in particular, seemed to glow with pride as he talked about his daughter landing such a catch and how beautiful the wedding was. When he spotted me, he waved me over. "Maya, come here, sweetheart. I was just telling the Johnsons about how you helped Sophia plan this beautiful event." I approached with a smile I'd perfected over years of family gatherings. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. It's lovely to see you again. Maya, dear, you've done such a wonderful job helping your sister," Mrs. Johnson gushed. "The planning must have taken months." "It did," I agreed pleasantly. My father beamed. "We're so proud of both our girls. Sophia for finding such happiness, and Maya for being such a supportive sister. It's exactly the role that suits her best. The role that suits me best." There it was again, the gentle, loving way of telling me to know my place. "Maya's always been good at that kind of thing," my mother chimed in, joining the group. "Supporting others, working behind the scenes. Not everyone can be a leader like Sophia." I nodded and smiled and played my part, just like I always had. But something was different now. The crack in the dam was getting wider. During dinner, I was seated at the family table, naturally positioned so I had a perfect view of the head table where Sophia and Bradley held court. I barely touched my food, the same menu I'd spent hours perfecting with the chef, and instead focused on watching my sister in her element. She was radiant, absolutely glowing with happiness and the satisfaction of being the center of attention. Every few minutes, someone would approach the head table to offer congratulations or share a story. Sophia handled it all with grace and charm, the perfect bride receiving her due admiration. When it came time for speeches, I wasn't surprised that I hadn't been asked to speak. Despite being the maid of honor, that privilege had been given to Bradley's best man and Sophia's college roommate. I sat quietly, applauding at appropriate moments, my carefully crafted speech still in my purse. But then Sophia stood up, champagne glass in hand, and asked for the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the conservatory. "This has truly been the most perfect day of my life, and I couldn't have done it without so many wonderful people." She went on to thank Bradley, their parents, the wedding party, even the vendors. Then she paused and looked directly at me. "I especially want to thank my sister Maya. Maya has always been—" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "Reliable. She's the type of person you can count on to take care of the details, to handle the things that other people don't want to deal with. And for this wedding, she really stepped up and showed what she's capable of when she puts her mind to it." The applause was polite and warm. I smiled and nodded graciously, even as I felt something inside me turn to ice. Reliable. Good with details. Stepped up and showed what she's capable of when she puts her mind to it. As if planning a wedding was the greatest achievement I could aspire to. As if managing logistics was the height of my potential. After dinner, as guests moved to the dance floor, I found myself standing alone on the terrace overlooking Lake Washington. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and rose. In a few hours, this perfect day would be over, and everyone would go home with their hearts full of joy and romance. Everyone except me. I was so lost in thought that I didn't hear footsteps behind me until someone cleared their throat. I turned to find Bradley's father, Richard, approaching, with 2 glasses of champagne. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, offering me one of the glasses. Richard was a distinguished man in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes. He'd always been pleasant to me during wedding events, though our conversations had never gone much beyond small talk. "Of course," I said, accepting the champagne. We stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the water. Then Richard spoke. "You know, I've been in business for 40 years, and I've learned to recognize certain qualities in people. Drive, vision, leadership potential." He paused, taking a sip of his champagne. You have all of those qualities, Maya. I've been watching you these past few months, the way you've handled every aspect of this wedding. Most people couldn't have pulled off something like this. I looked at him with surprise. Thank you, Mr. Wellington. That's very kind of you to say. He chuckled. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Do you know what I did before I retired? Something in real estate, I thought. I was a venture capitalist. I spent 30 years identifying promising investments, most of them in tech companies. I had a nose for spotting potential that others missed. He turned to face me directly. So tell me, Maya, what do you really do for work? Because I have a feeling it's not just helping people with computers as your family seems to think. Something in his tone, in the directness of his question, made me decide to be honest. Maybe it was the champagne, or maybe it was the exhaustion of pretending to be less than I was for so many years. I'm the CEO of a software company, I said quietly. We develop predictive analytics platforms for the hospitality industry. We sold our main product to a major corporation 3 years ago for $15 million. Richard's eyebrows shot. But he didn't look surprised, more like confirmed in something he'd already suspected. And let me guess, he continued. Your family doesn't know? I shook my head. They think I do IT support for small businesses. Why? It was such a simple question, but it hit me like a physical blow. Why? Why had I let them think less of me? Why had I hidden my success? Why had I made myself smaller? To make them more comfortable? Because, I said slowly, the few times I tried to share my achievements when I was younger, I was either ignored or told I was showing off. So I learned to keep quiet. And then, I guess, keeping quiet became a habit. Richard nodded thoughtfully. You know, I almost didn't come to this wedding. Why not? Because I've seen the way your family treats you, the way they talk to you, about you. It made me uncomfortable because I saw something in you that they clearly don't. But Bradley insisted, and I'm glad I came, because I wanted to tell you something. He paused, looking out over the water again. My company is looking for partners in the tech space, companies with proven track records and visionary leadership. If you're interested, I'd like to set up a proper meeting sometime. Not because you're part of the family now, but because I think you're exactly the kind of entrepreneur we want to work with. I stared at him, speechless. Here was this man, someone I barely knew, offering me the kind of business opportunity my own family couldn't even imagine I was qualified for. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. My direct number is on there. Call me when you're ready. As Richard walked away, I stood there holding his card, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted. For the first time in years, someone saw me. Really saw me. Not as the helpful sister or the reliable assistant, but as a successful, capable businesswoman. I looked back through the glass doors of the conservatory, where the reception was in full swing. Sophia was dancing with Bradley, surrounded by family and friends, radiant in her happiness. This was her moment, her perfect day, exactly as she'd always dreamed it would be. And I realized, standing there with a business card in my hand and champagne in my glass, that I was tired of living in the shadow of her moment, tired of being grateful for scraps of acknowledgement, tired of pretending that being helpful was enough. But most of all, I was tired of giving everything I had to people who didn't even see what they were receiving. It was time for that to change. And tomorrow, I thought as I slipped Richard's card into my purse, I would start making some changes of my own. The morning after the wedding, I woke up in my penthouse apartment with a champagne headache and a business card on my nightstand. Richard Wellington's card sat there like a small beacon of possibility. But first, I had other matters to attend to. I'd left Cascade Gardens around midnight after helping coordinate the cleanup and ensuring everything was perfect for the staff. Who would handle the rest? Even at my own venue, I'd played the role of helpful assistant to the very end. But something had shifted during those conversations with Richard, and in those moments of standing alone, watching my family celebrate Sophia's perfect day. The shift became a crack when my phone started buzzing at 8 a.m. with notifications from the family group chat. The same family group chat I'd been added back to 3 days ago, so everyone could coordinate for the wedding weekend. I almost laughed at the irony. Removed when I wasn't needed, added back when I was useful. Sophia had posted a marathon of wedding photos with captions dripping with gratitude for everyone who made her day absolutely magical. The photos were stunning, professional shots of her and Bradley in the conservatory, candid moments of laughter during the reception, artistic captures of her dress against the backdrop of the gardens. Every single photo told the story of a perfect wedding. What none of them showed was the 6 months of planning, the late nights coordinating with vendors, the countless phone calls to ensure every detail was flawless. What none of them showed was me. I scrolled through dozens of photos, looking for even one that included the maid of honor. There I was, finally, in a group shot of the entire wedding party, standing slightly behind the others, smiling dutifully, perfectly positioned to not overshadow the bride. The caption read, "Surrounded by the best people in the world." The comments were flowing in from relatives and friends, all variations of "so beautiful" and "perfect day." But one comment from my grandmother made me pause. "Sophia, you looked absolutely radiant. Your sister did such a wonderful job helping with everything. You're lucky to have Maya." Sophia's response appeared minutes later. "Yes, Maya was great at handling all the little details. She's always been so good at that kind of thing." Little details. There it was again. 300 people attended that wedding. Every flower arrangement, every menu item, every musical selection, every timeline coordination, all little details in Sophia's mind. 6 months of my life distilled down to handling the little details. I set the phone down and walked to my kitchen, brewing coffee in the silence of my 2,000-square-foot apartment. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seattle was waking up to a bright Sunday morning. The city spread out below me, full of people building their own lives, chasing their own dreams, not waiting for permission or recognition from anyone. Why had I been waiting? My laptop sat open on the marble kitchen island, showing my email inbox with 47 unread messages, most of them work-related. My company didn't stop because I spent a weekend playing supporting actress in my sister's fairy tale. I had client presentations to prepare, a board meeting on Tuesday, and a new product launch next month that would revolutionize how hotels managed their customer data. But first, I had some personal business to handle. I opened a new browser, window, and navigated to the back end of Cascade Gardens' booking system. As the owner, I had access to everything: financial records, contracts, communication logs, staff schedules. I pulled up Sophia's wedding file and began reading through the correspondence. The paper trail told an interesting story. The initial inquiry had come through Bradley's mother, who'd listed their budget as approximately $100,000. The standard rate for a Saturday wedding at Cascade Gardens was $85,000, which included the venue, basic coordination, and premium catering for up to 200 guests. Then came the emails from Sophia herself. Her first message was polite but presumptuous. "We're hoping to work within a budget of $75,000 maximum. This is such an important day for us, and we heard amazing things about your venue. Is there any possibility of a discount for a local family?" My venue manager, Jennifer, had politely explained that our pricing was fixed and reflected the exclusive nature of the venue. She'd offered to create a custom package that might fit their budget by reducing some services. Sophia's response was telling. "I really think if you could just speak to the owner, they'd understand how important this is to our family. My sister has connections in the industry and she assured me she could work something out. Can you please just check with whoever owns this place? I remembered that day clearly now. I'd been in a board meeting when Jennifer knocked on my office door, apology written across her face. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a potential client who insists you'd want to take her call personally. Something about family connections? I'd taken the call, of course. Sophia's voice had been bright with confidence as she explained the situation. She never directly asked me to use my connections to get her a discount. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. I knew people. I could make things happen. And as her sister, I should want to help. So I had. I'd authorized a $45,000 family discount that came directly out of my pocket. The contract listed it as a special promotion, but the truth was simpler. I'd paid $40,000 for the privilege of watching my family celebrate Sophia while treating me like an employee. But the financial loss wasn't what stung. It was what came next in the email chain. 3 days before the wedding, Sophia had sent Jennifer a message asking about the additional insurance they'd need for such an expensive venue. Jennifer had responded with our standard information packet, including a note that most clients found the insurance unnecessary since the venue carried comprehensive coverage. Sophia had written back, "Just to clarify, if anything goes wrong, like weather damage or vendor issues, we won't be held responsible for additional costs, right? My sister arranged this whole thing, and she knows the venue owner, so I'm assuming she worked out the details." In other words, Sophia assumed that my connections included getting her out of any potential liability. She'd trusted her helpful little sister to handle everything, including protecting her from any consequences. I sat back in my chair, coffee growing cold in my hands. The entitlement was breathtaking. Not just the assumption that I would get her a discount, but that I would also assume all financial risk if anything went wrong. I'd been so focused on making her day perfect that I hadn't even seen the layers of her expectations. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed my mother's name. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Hi, Mom. Maya, sweetheart. I hope you're not too exhausted from yesterday. What a beautiful wedding that was." It really was. Sophia looked stunning. She did, and you did such a wonderful job helping her. Everyone was commenting on how organized everything was. You should feel so proud. Should feel proud about doing exactly what was expected of me, nothing more. "I'm glad everything went smoothly," I said carefully. "Oh, it more than went smoothly. It was perfect. You know, I was talking to Mrs. Jefferson after the ceremony, and she said she'd never seen a wedding run so precisely. She asked who your sister's wedding planner was, and I told her it was mostly you. She was so impressed." I blinked slowly. "Mom, I wasn't Sophia's wedding planner. She had an actual wedding planner. I just helped with some things." "Well, of course, but you did so much more than help. You basically coordinated the whole thing. Sophia was telling everyone how you managed to get that beautiful venue. There it was. Managed to get, not owned, not gifted, not subsidized out. Of my own pocket. I'd managed to get it, like a particularly savvy travel agent. Has Dad left for his golf game yet?" I asked, changing the subject. "Oh, yes, he left an hour ago. He was still talking about the wedding. He's so proud of both his girls. Sophia for marrying such a wonderful man, and you for stepping up and really contributing to the family for once." Contributing to the family for once. The words hit me like a physical slap. I'd built a multi-million-dollar business. I'd created jobs for 50 people. I'd been featured in business magazines and spoke at conferences. But none of that was contributing to the family like helping my sister plan her wedding. "Mom, I have to go. I have some work to catch up on." "On a Sunday? Maya, you work too much. You should take some time to enjoy life. Maybe focus on finding someone special like Sophia did. You're not getting any younger, sweetheart. After hanging up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, looking out at the city that I'd conquered in my own small way. At 28, I was younger than most CEOs, successful beyond what anyone in my family had achieved, and yet I was still the daughter who worked too much and needed to find a man to complete her life. I opened my laptop again, this time navigating to my company's website. There I was, professional headshot prominently displayed, bio listing my achievements, Forbes 30 under 30 logo clearly visible. This was who I really was. Not the helpful sister, not the reliable assistant, but Maya Chen, CEO and founder of Dataflow Solutions. The contrast was jarring. In my professional life, I was a leader, an innovator, someone people sought out for advice and partnership. In my family, I was the girl who was good with computers and finally found something useful to do. A new email notification popped up. It was from Jennifer at Cascade Gardens, marked urgent. Maya, I hope you had a chance to rest after yesterday. The event was flawless, as always. However, we have a situation. Sophia called this morning asking about getting her full deposit back. She claims there was an understanding that the deposit would be refunded if her sister arranged the booking. She's quite insistent and wanted me to tell you that Maya knows the deal we worked out. Please advise. Jennifer. I stared at the email for a full minute, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Sophia wanted the deposit back, the deposit on her own wedding, because she believed that my connections included getting her the venue for free. I called Jennifer immediately. Jennifer, hi, I just saw your email. Can you tell me exactly what? Sophia said. Hi, Maya. She called around 9 this morning, very cheerful but firm. She said she wanted to discuss the financial arrangements for yesterday's event. When I told her everything had been paid in full, she seemed confused. She said her sister had arranged everything and that there was some kind of special deal. She kept saying, Maya knows what we discussed, and asked me to call you directly. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. What exactly did she expect? Well, she seemed to think the $10,000 deposit was just a placeholder and would be refunded after the event. She said something about family courtesy and how you'd assured her the financial details were all taken care of. Family courtesy. I'd never said anything about refunding the deposit. I'd never even hinted at it. But somehow, in Sophia's mind, my connections meant getting her wedding venue for the cost of catering alone. Jennifer, the contract stands as written. The deposit was part of the payment, not a placeholder. Please send Sophia a copy of the signed contract if she has questions. Of course. But Maya, there's something else. She also asked about renting the venue again for their first anniversary party next year. She wanted to know if your arrangement would extend to future events. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. In Sophia's world, I wasn't her sister who'd given her the gift of a lifetime. I was her connection to an endless stream of favors and discounts. There is no arrangement, Jennifer. Any future bookings would be at standard rates and availability. After ending the call, I sat in my office. Yes, I had a home office that was larger than most people's living rooms, looking at the vision board I'd created 5 years ago when I first started my company. Pictures of successful women CEOs, quotes about building something meaningful, goals written in my own handwriting. Be recognized for my achievements. Create value that speaks for itself. Never have to diminish myself to fit into someone else's story. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped living up to those goals. I'd fallen back into the family pattern of making myself smaller, easier to digest, less threatening to their carefully constructed narrative of who I was supposed to be. But yesterday had changed something. Maybe it was hearing Sophia refer to my CEO role as a hobby that makes some money. Maybe it was listening to her friends laugh about my social awkwardness while standing in the venue I owned. Maybe it was the moment I realized that no amount of helping, No amount of generosity, no amount of self-sacrifice would ever change how they saw me. Or maybe it was Richard Wellington's business card, now pinned to my vision board as a reminder that somewhere, someone saw my actual value. I spent the rest of Sunday working on a presentation for the board meeting, losing myself in financial projections and market analysis. This was my element. This was where I belonged. Not in the background of someone else's story, but at the center of my own. Monday morning came with Seattle's typical gray drizzle. I dressed carefully in my favorite power suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the kind that commanded attention in boardrooms. I had meetings scheduled all day, starting with our development team at 8 and ending with a potential client dinner at 7. The first meeting was about our new predictive analytics platform, designed to help hotels optimize their booking systems. The technology was cutting edge, the kind of innovation that would set the standard for the industry. As I listened to my development lead explained the latest improvements, I felt the familiar excitement of building something revolutionary. "Maya, the demo is ready for Thursday's presentation," Sarah, my CTO, said as the meeting wrapped up. "The client reaction should be impressive. This platform could change how the entire hospitality industry operates." I smiled, remembering why I loved this work. Here, my opinions mattered. Here, my vision shaped the direction of the company. Here, I wasn't anyone's helpful assistant. Between meetings, I found myself thinking about Sophia's call to Jennifer. The audacity of it still stunned me, but it also clarified something I'd been avoiding. My family didn't just misunderstand my success. They fundamentally couldn't conceive of it. To them, I'd always be Maya who helps, Maya who fixes things, Maya who handles details. But what if I stopped? What if, instead of hiding my success, to make them comfortable, I let them see exactly who I was? What if I stopped bending myself into shapes that fit their expectations and started standing at my full height? The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I'd spent so many years protecting them from the reality of my success, partly out of habit and partly out of fear. Fear that they'd feel diminished by it, fear that it would create conflict, fear that they'd find new ways to minimize what I'd built. But Saturday night had shown me something important. They were already diminishing what I'd built. They were already minimizing my achievements. The only difference was that I'd been complicit in it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Maya, hope you're doing well after the wedding madness. Bradley and I just wanted to thank you again for everything. You were amazing. P.S. Called the venue about a tiny billing issue but should all be sorted out soon." A tiny billing issue. Right. I was about to respond when another text came through, this one from Richard Wellington. "Maya, I hope you've had time to consider our conversation. I'd love to schedule a proper meeting to discuss potential partnership opportunities. Are you available this week?" I stared at both texts for a moment, seeing them as symbols of two completely different paths. One led back to the familiar role of helpful sister, the behind-the-scenes supporter, the one who made things happen but never got credit. The other led to something unknown but promising, a partnership based on mutual respect and recognition of my actual capabilities. The choice was obvious. I responded to Richard first. "Mr. Wellington, I'd be very interested in discussing potential opportunities. I'm available Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning. Please let me know what works best for you." Then I turned to Sophia's message. I typed and deleted several responses, ranging from gentle correction to angry confrontation. Finally, I settled on something simple. "Glad you had such a wonderful day. The venue payment was processed according to the contract you signed. Looking forward to seeing your photos." It was polite, factual, and offered no invitation for further discussion about special arrangements or family discounts. Tuesday arrived, with an unexpected phone call from my father. "Maya, sweetheart, how are you? Recovering from all that wedding excitement?" "I'm fine, Dad. Back to work as usual." Good, listen. Your mother mentioned that Sophia had some questions about the venue billing. She thought maybe you could clear things up with your contacts there. I took a deep breath. Here it was, the family assuming I'd fix whatever problem Sophia had created with her expectations. Dad, there's no billing issue. Sophia and Bradley received exactly what they paid for according to their contract. Oh, I'm sure that's right. But you know how these places operate. Sometimes there are opportunities for adjustment when you know the right people. Opportunities for adjustment. Even my father assumed my business contacts were there to provide special favors for my family. Dad, I want to clarify something. I don't have contacts at Cascade Gardens. I own it. Silence on the other end of the line. Long, complete silence. What did you say? I own Cascade Gardens. I bought it 3 years ago. Sophia's wedding was held at my venue, at my substantial discount, managed by my staff. More. Silence. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from my father before, Maya, are you joking? No, Dad, I'm not joking. I own several properties, actually. It's part of my business portfolio. But how could we not know this? How could you not tell us? It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself since Saturday night. Because every time I tried to share my business success, it was dismissed or minimized. Remember, when I told you about the Forbes article, you said it was nice publicity for my computer hobby. When I mentioned my company was expanding internationally, Mom said it was cute that I was playing businesswoman. So I stopped sharing. I could hear him breathing on the other end, processing this information. Maya, I had no idea. We had no idea. Why didn't you insist that we understand? Because I've spent most of my life being told I was too ambitious, too serious, too focused on work, and not enough on family. I learned to keep my professional life separate to avoid conflict. But this is incredible. You own that beautiful venue? You run that successful company? Why would you hide this from us? The question hung in the air between us. Why had I hidden it? To protect their feelings? To avoid their judgment? To prevent comparisons with Sophia? All of those reasons felt smaller now in the light of day. I wasn't hiding it, Dad. I was just tired of having to defend my choices to people who didn't understand them. We talked for another 20 minutes, and for the first time in years, my father asked detailed questions about my work, real questions about market strategy and business growth and technological innovation. He listened to my answers with genuine interest, occasionally saying things like, "I had no idea," and "Maya, this is remarkable." When we hung up, I felt lighter somehow. Not forgiven, there was nothing to forgive, but understood. Finally, understood. Wednesday's meeting with Richard Wellington took place at his downtown office, in a conference room with views of Elliott Bay. He'd brought 2 of his partners, and I'd brought my latest company prospectus and financial reports. Maya, before we discuss business, I have to say that your background is even more impressive than I realized, Richard began. When I looked into data flow solutions after our conversation, I was genuinely surprised by the scope of what you've built. Thank you. I'll admit, I don't often talk about my work with my family. We tend to focus on other things. One of his partners, a woman in her 50s, leaned forward. That's not uncommon, especially for young women in tech. I've seen brilliant entrepreneurs hide their success to maintain family harmony, but it's never sustainable long-term. She was right, of course. The charade was exhausting and ultimately pointless. My family would either accept who I really was, or they wouldn't. But I was done making myself smaller to find out. The meeting went better than I'd hoped. Richard's firm was interested in partnering with us on several projects, including a major expansion into the Asian markets. They saw the potential in our platform and, more importantly, they saw the potential in me as a leader. "Maya, I think we could do great things together," Richard said as we shook hands at the end of the meeting. "You have exactly the kind of vision and execution capability we look for in partners." As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of being seen and appreciated for exactly who I was. Not who I could be helpful to, not what I could do for others, but for my own achievements and potential. That evening, I sat in my office at home and finally made the decision I'd been avoiding since Sunday. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my family. "Dear Mom, Dad, and Sophia," I began. "I wanted to share some information about my professional life that I realize I haven't been clear about. I wrote about my company, about our clients and innovations, about the speaking engagements and industry awards, about the real estate, investments, and financial success. I wrote about why I'd kept these achievements private and how that had been a mistake. I wrote about Cascade Gardens, about the discount I'd provided for the wedding, about the years of work that had made Saturday's perfection possible. I didn't write it to make them feel guilty or to diminish Sophia's happiness. I wrote it because they deserved to know who their daughter and sister really was. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit send. Then I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and stood at my windows looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, my family would wake up to a different version of Maya than the one they thought they knew. Some of them might be proud. Some might be confused. Some might even be resentful. But for the first time in my adult life, they would know the truth about who I really was, and that felt like the first step toward something better. The responses to my email arrived in waves throughout Thursday morning, each one a revelation, in its own way. My father called first at 7 a.m. His voice was different, thoughtful, almost hesitant. "Maya, I couldn't sleep last night after reading your email. I've been thinking about everything you wrote, and I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually." I was in my kitchen, preparing for another day of meetings, but his tone made me stop and sit down. "We've been blind, sweetheart. Willfully. Blind, maybe. I kept thinking about that Forbes article you mentioned, and you're right. I dismissed it. I called your work a computer hobby because I honestly didn't understand what you were building. But that's not an excuse. Dad, No, let me finish. I've spent 30 years in insurance, thinking I understood business and success. But what you've built? What you've achieved at your age? I'm not sure I would have had the vision or courage to do any of it. I'm proud of you, Maya. More proud than I knew how to express." His words hit me unexpectedly hard. I'd armored myself for criticism, for disbelief, for more minimizing. I hadn't prepared for pride. "Your mother and we'd like to take you to dinner this weekend. Just us. We want to hear about your work, really hear about it. And Maya, we want to understand why you felt you couldn't share this with us before." After we hung up, I sat in the quietness of my apartment, processing what felt like a monumental shift. My father didn't just acknowledge my success. He'd reflected on his own role in why I'd hidden it. My mother's response came via text an hour later. "Maya, I read your email twice and then read it again to your father. We had no idea we made you feel that your achievements weren't valued. We always wanted what was best for you girls, but clearly we didn't understand what best meant for you. Can we talk?" And then there was Sophia. Her response came at noon, just as I was leaving a client lunch. It was a single line. "Maya, I'm confused. Can you call me? We need to talk." I was in my car when I decided to call her back, hands-free as I navigated Seattle traffic. "Maya." Her voice was artificially bright. "I got your email. Is this some kind of joke?" "No, Sophia, it's not a joke. It's information I should have shared years ago." Silence. Then, "You own Cascade Gardens? You actually own it?" "Yes." "But how?" I mean, when? You never said anything. I've owned it for 3 years. I bought it when my company went international. Another pause. I could hear her breathing, processing. Maya, I don't understand. If you own it, why did we pay anything? Why didn't you just let us use it for free? There it was. Not congratulations on my success, not amazement at what I'd built, but confusion about why I hadn't given her more. Because it's a business, Sophia. Because even family pays fair market rates for professional services. But we're family. That's what family does. They help each other. I pulled into the parking garage at my office, needing to end this conversation before I said something I'd regret. Sophia, I gave you a 40% discount on one of Seattle's most exclusive venues. I spent 6 months planning every detail of your wedding. I'm not sure what more help you expected. Maya, you're being dramatic. Look, I appreciate what you did, but you could have told us. You made it seem like you barely knew anyone there. She still didn't get it. She couldn't see past her own experience to understand mine. I'll talk to you later, Sophia. I have meetings. Maya, wait. About the venue. We were hoping to book it for our anniversary next year. Since you own it, that should be easy to arrange, right? I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Any bookings would go through our normal process. Jennifer can send you information if you're interested. I hung up before she could respond, sitting in my car in the dim garage, feeling a mixture of disappointment and clarity. My parents were ready to see me differently. Sophia, it seemed, was not. But I had work to do, a company to run, and a life to live that didn't revolve around my family's perceptions. The afternoon brought a different kind of validation. I was presenting our new platform to a potential client, a major hotel chain with properties across North America. The boardroom was full of executives, and I stood at the head of the table, confident in my element. The predictive analytics we've developed don't just forecast booking patterns, I explained, manipulating the interactive display behind me. They anticipate customer behavior, optimize pricing in real time, and identify revenue opportunities that traditional systems miss entirely. The questions that followed were sharp, technical, exactly the kind I loved answering. These people understood what I'd built because they understood the industry. They saw the innovation, the potential market impact, the competitive advantage. Ms. Chen, the VP of Operations, said as the presentation concluded, "This is exactly what we've been looking for. When can we begin implementation?" 2 hours later, I walked out with a signed contract worth $3 million over 2 years. It was the biggest client acquisition in my company's history. I called my team together for an impromptu celebration. Sarah brought champagne she'd been saving. Marcus from marketing ordered pizza, and we gathered in the conference room overlooking the Sound. "To Maya," Sarah said, raising her glass, "who proves every day that vision and persistence can literally change an industry." Looking around at these people, my people, the team I'd built, I felt more valued and understood than I ever had at any family gathering. These were people who celebrated my ambition instead of quietly tolerating it, who pushed me to think bigger instead of smaller. "To all of us," I corrected, raising my own glass. "None of this happens without every person in this room. We're building something revolutionary together." But even in that moment of triumph, I found myself thinking about Saturday night, about the gap between who I was in this room and who I'd allowed myself to be at my sister's wedding. The contrast was stark and unsettling. My phone buzzed with congratulations from clients and industry contacts as word of the new partnership spread. These were my peers, people who understood the significance of what we'd accomplished. Their excitement was genuine and informed. Then, at 5 p.m., Sophia called again. "Maya, I've been thinking about our conversation, and I'm hurt." I was in my office looking over the contract we'd just signed, feeling the rush of a major professional victory. Her words felt like cold water. Heard about what, Sophia? You made me look stupid, at my own wedding. Letting everyone think I'd somehow convinced this exclusive venue to give us a deal through my connections, when really, it was you the whole time. I set the contract down, giving her my full attention. Sophia, at no point did I say you had convinced anyone of anything. You assumed I had connections. You told people I had connections. But you let me believe it. You let me take credit for something you did. The irony was breathtaking. Sophia, you did take credit. You took credit for my work, my venue, my discount. I just didn't correct you. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Maya, people are going to think I lied about how we got the venue. Did you lie about how you got the venue? No. I mean, I thought you knew someone. You said you knew someone. I said I'd make some calls. I never said I didn't know the owner personally. I could hear her getting more frustrated, her voice rising. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Maya. You're twisting everything. You're making this about some big conspiracy when all I did was trust my sister to help me. And I did help you, Sophia, more than you'll ever know. Then why are you making such a big deal about it now? Why did you have to send that email to everyone? Why couldn't you just keep things the way they were? Keep things the way they were, where I was helpful and invisible, valuable but unacknowledged, successful but silent about it. Because the way things were wasn't working for me anymore, Sophia. What's that supposed to mean? I looked around my office, at the awards on the walls, the photos from speaking engagements, the magazine covers featuring innovative women in tech. None of my family had ever seen this space, this life I'd built. It means I'm tired of hiding who I am to make other people comfortable. It means I'm done pretending my achievements don't matter to avoid overshadowing yours. Overshadowing mine? Maya, what are you talking about? I've never asked you to. You didn't have to ask, Sophia. Every time I mentioned a business success and was told I was showing off, every time my work was dismissed as a hobby, every time I was praised for finally contributing to the family by planning your wedding, the message was clear. Be helpful, not ambitious. Be supportive, not successful. She was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. Maya, I never meant to make you feel that way. I know you didn't, but intent and impact aren't the same thing. So what now? Are you just going to hold this against us forever? Use it as some kind of weapon? No, Sophia. I'm going to live authentically. I'm going to stop diminishing myself, and I'm going to expect you to see me as I actually am, not as who you need me to be. After we hung up, I sat in the dimming light of my office, watching the city come alive with evening lights. Change was never easy, especially in families with established patterns and expectations. But staying small to make others comfortable had cost me years of authentic relationships. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. Maya, I just got off the phone with Sophia. She's upset. I imagine she is. Sweetheart, she feels like you ambushed her, like you deliberately made her look foolish. I sighed. Mom, I didn't ambush anyone. I simply told the truth about my professional life. But why now? Why not before? Because before, no one wanted to hear it. Before it was dismissed or minimized or compared unfavorably to Sophia's choices. I got tired of fighting for basics. Recognition of what I'd accomplished. Maya, we never meant to. I know you didn't mean to, but that doesn't change what happened. She was quiet for a moment. Your father and I talked for a long time last night, about how we raised you. Girls, about the different expectations we had, we think. We think we made some mistakes. This was new. My mother acknowledging mistakes instead of explaining them away. We were so focused on making sure Sophia felt confident and supported because she was more sensitive, more fragile. Maybe. We thought you were stronger, more independent, that you didn't need as much validation. Different doesn't mean I didn't need validation, Mom. It just means I needed it for different things. I know that now. And Maya, about the wedding, Sophia told us about the discount you gave her, about how you paid the difference yourself. We had no idea. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I wanted her to have her perfect day. But you deserved recognition anyway. You deserve to be thanked properly, to be acknowledged for what you made possible. I felt tears threatening, not from sadness, but from relief. Finally, someone understood what had been missing. Maya, is it too late? Can we start? Over? Not just with tonight's dinner, but with everything? It's not about starting over, Mom. It's about moving forward honestly. Then that's what we'll do. And Maya? We're going to call Sophia and explain some things to her too. About fairness, about gratitude, about seeing people as they really are. Friday brought new challenges and new revelations. Richard Wellington called with a proposal that would expand our partnership significantly. The Japanese hotel chain. His firm represented wanted to license our platform for their entire global network. Maya, this could be transformative for data flow, he said. We're talking about $50 million in revenue over 5 years, plus equity partnerships in 3 new markets. I was standing in my apartment, looking out at the rain-soaked city, trying to process the magnitude of what he was offering. Richard, this is incredible. But can I ask you something? Of course. Why us? Why not one of the larger firms with more resources? He chuckled. Because larger doesn't always mean better. Because you've built something genuinely innovative, and because I've seen how you handle pressure and opportunity. That presentation you gave my team on Wednesday? That was the work of someone who doesn't just understand technology. She understands transformation. After we hung up, I called my team together for an emergency meeting. The conference room filled quickly, faces eager and curious. I have some news that will change everything for us, I began. And as I explained the opportunity Richard had presented, I watched my team's excitement build. Maya, this is what we've been working toward, Sarah said, her eyes bright. Global presence, industry transformation, proving that our vision was right. The question is, I said, are we ready? This would mean expanding rapidly, hiring 40 new people, opening offices in Tokyo and London. Are we prepared for that level of growth? Marcus from marketing laughed. Are you seriously asking if we're ready to become one of the most influential platform providers in the hospitality industry? Maya, we've been ready since day one. The question is, are you ready? Was I ready? To step fully into the spotlight, to claim my place as a leader in my industry, to stop hiding behind modesty and start owning my success? Yes, I said, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. Yes, I'm ready. The weekend brought family dinner at my parents' house, the first one I'd attended in 6 months. I dressed carefully, professional but not intimidating, successful but not showy. Old habits die hard, but when I arrived, I found the atmosphere completely different from what I'd expected. My father met me at the door, not with his usual distracted hug, but with genuine enthusiasm. Maya, come in. I've been looking forward to this all week. The living room had been transformed into something resembling a gallery. My father had printed out articles about data flow, photos from my speaking engagements, even the Forbes feature I'd mentioned. They were arranged on the coffee table like treasures. Dad, what is all this? This is your daughter, he said to my mother as she joined us. Our daughter, the one we never properly appreciated. My mother's eyes were red, like she'd been crying recently. Maya, We spent the week reading everything we could find about you and your company. Did you know there's a TED Talk where they call you a visionary who's reshaping how technology serves human connection? I shook my head, overwhelmed. We watched it 3 times, she continued, and every time we saw a confident, articulate, brilliant woman talking about innovation and leadership. And we realized we'd never seen that woman at our dinner table, because we never gave her space to exist here. We talked through dinner about my work, my goals, my challenges. For the first time in my adult life, my parents asked detailed questions about my business and listened carefully to my answers. They wanted to understand not just what I did, but how I thought about the future, what drove my passion for innovation. Maya, my father said as we cleared the plates, I have to ask, why did you give Sophia such a significant discount on the venue? Why not tell her it was yours from the beginning? I considered the question carefully. Because I wanted her to have her perfect day without any complications. I didn't want the focus to shift from her happiness to my success. And honestly, I was used to my achievements being invisible to the family. That was generous, my mother said quietly. Too generous, maybe. You shouldn't have had to hide your success to give your sister her wedding. But that's in the past now, I said. The question is how we move forward. My father nodded. Moving forward, we celebrate all our daughter's achievements equally. Moving forward, we ask about your work with the same interest we show Sophia's life. Moving forward, we understand that success takes many forms. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of being truly seen by my family. Not as a compliment to Sophia, not as a supporting character in someone else's story, but as myself, successful, ambitious, accomplished Maya. But the real test would come Sunday at the family barbecue my mother had organized. Sophia would be there, along with various cousins and aunts and uncles. The people who'd always seen me as the quiet one, the computer person, the one who helped but didn't lead. Sunday morning, I woke up with a mix of anxiety and determination. I chose to wear something that represented who I really was, a blazer from the day I'd pitched to our biggest client, paired with jeans that said I was confident but approachable. When I arrived at my parents' house, the backyard was already full of people. Sophia was there with Bradley, looking beautiful and relaxed in a summer dress. She spotted me immediately and walked over. Maya, we need to talk. Okay. She led me away from the group, to the far end of the garden where my mother's roses created a natural barrier. I've been thinking about everything you said, about the wedding and the venue and everything. And I realized something. I waited. I was jealous, she said quietly. Maybe not consciously, but jealous. Here you were, solving my biggest wedding problem like it was nothing, and I couldn't figure out how you did it. It made me feel less capable. So I convinced myself that you were just lucky, that you happened to know someone, that it wasn't really that impressive. She paused, looking down at her hands. But you didn't just know someone, Maya. You were someone. You are someone. And instead of being proud of my sister for building something incredible, I was threatened by it. I felt my defenses lowering, slightly. Sophia. No, let me finish. Mom and Dad told me about your new business deal, about how important your company is becoming. And I realized that while I was planning one perfect day, you were building years of perfect achievements, and I never acknowledged any of it. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I'm sorry, Maya. I'm sorry I minimized your work. I'm sorry I took credit for your generosity without understanding the magnitude of it. And I'm sorry I called you dramatic for wanting recognition you'd always deserved. I stared at her, seeing something in her expression I'd rarely seen before. Genuine remorse and respect. Thank you for saying that, Sophia. It means more than you know. Can we start over? not as the golden child and the helper, but as sisters who support each other's success? Because I want to understand your world, Maya. I want to be proud of you the way you've always been proud of me. I hugged her then, not the polite family hug we'd perfected over the years, but a real embrace between two women who'd finally found a way to see each other clearly. When we rejoined the party, I noticed something different. My cousin James approached me with questions about data flow that suggested he'd done research. My Aunt Patricia wanted to hear about my expansion plans. Uncle Robert asked about the technical challenges of predictive analytics. For the first time at a family gathering, I was the center of conversations about innovation and leadership. People were curious about my work, impressed by my achievements, interested in my perspective. "Maya," my grandmother said, pulling me aside, "I always knew you were special, but I never understood how special. Your grandfather would have been so proud of what you've built." As the afternoon wore on, I found myself relaxing in a way I never had at family events. I didn't have to minimize myself or deflect attention. I could talk about my work with passion, share my excitement about future projects, be fully myself. Near the end of the party, Richard Wellington called with final details about the partnership. I stepped away to take the call, pacing on my parents' back deck as we discussed timelines and logistics. "Maya, I just wanted to say again how impressed our entire team is with you," he said as we wrapped up. "You've built something remarkable, and we're honored to be partnering with you." When I hung up, I found Sophia standing at the sliding door, having overheard the conversation. "That sounded important," she said. It was. We just finalized a partnership that will expand data flow internationally. It's the biggest deal in our company's history. Instead of changing the subject or minimizing the achievement, Sophia grinned. "Maya, that's incredible. You have to tell everyone. This is huge." And so I did. I gathered the family and shared the news about the partnership, about the global expansion, about what this meant for Dataflow's future. The response was everything I'd never allowed myself to hope for. Genuine excitement, pride, celebration of my success. "To Maya," my father said, raising his beer, "who's put Seattle on the map in the tech world and shown us all what determination and vision can accomplish." "To Maya," the family echoed, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and valued for exactly who I was. Later that evening, as I sat in my apartment reviewing contracts for the international expansion, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the quiet girl good with computers to the CEO featured in Forbes. From the helpful sister organizing wedding details to the businesswoman commanding respect in boardrooms worldwide. The transformation hadn't been just professional, it had been personal. I'd stopped waiting for permission to be successful. I'd stopped shrinking to fit other people's comfort zones. I'd started owning my achievements instead of hiding them. And in doing so, I'd discovered something remarkable. The people who mattered, the people worth having in my life, didn't need me to be smaller. They celebrated my growth, supported my ambition, and respected my success. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Maya, I just looked up data flow online." "Holy shit, you're kind of famous." In a good way. "So proud to be your sister." I smiled, typing back. "Thanks, Soph. Proud to be yours too." For the first time in years, I meant it completely. Not because she'd changed, but because I'd finally found the courage to show up as myself and discovered that who I really was had always been worthy of love and respect. The next chapter of my story was just beginning, and for once, I would be the author of it. 3 months after Sophia's wedding, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined when I stood in that conservatory, watching my sister dance in the venue I owned but couldn't acknowledge. The ripple effects of that decision to live authentically had created waves that reached every corner of my existence. Dataflow's international expansion was ahead of schedule. Our Tokyo office had opened to immediate success, with 3 major hotel chains already implementing our platform across their properties. The London office was launching next month, and I'd been spending every other week traveling between cities, building relationships, establishing our global presence. But perhaps more importantly, my relationship with my family had undergone a complete metamorphosis. The weekly dinners that had once felt like obligations now felt like celebrations. My parents genuinely wanted to hear about my work, asking intelligent questions and offering insights from their own business experience that I'd never known existed. "Maya, I've been reading about artificial intelligence in hospitality," my father said over Sunday dinner. "Do you think that's the next frontier for data flow?" These weren't the polite, surface-level questions I'd grown accustomed to. These were the queries of someone who had taken the time to understand my industry, who saw me as an expert worth consulting. "Actually, Dad, we're already integrating AI into our predictive algorithms. The challenge isn't the technology, it's helping traditional hotel chains understand how to leverage it without losing the human element that defines hospitality." Sophia, who had initially struggled with the shift in family dynamics, had surprised everyone by becoming one of my biggest supporters. She'd started following data flow on social media, sharing articles about our innovations, and even attending a tech conference with me to better understand my world. "Maya, I've been thinking," she said as we walked through Pike Place Market on a Saturday morning, a new tradition we'd started. "Remember how you said you were tired of hiding who you were? I realized I've been doing the same thing, just differently." I looked at her with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I've been hiding behind being the pretty one, the social one, the one who got married first. But those aren't achievements, Maya. Those are just circumstances. Watching you own your success has made me realize I've never really built anything of my own." This conversation led to something neither of us had expected. Sophia had always been passionate about sustainable fashion but had never pursued it seriously. With my encouragement and business guidance, she launched her own ethical clothing line 3 months later. I helped her develop a business plan, introduced her to potential investors, and watched with pride as she discovered her own entrepreneurial spirit. "You know what's funny?" she said during one of our now regular coffee meetings where we discussed both our businesses. "I always thought success meant finding the right husband, planning the perfect wedding, having the ideal life. I never considered that success could mean building something that reflects who you really are." The transformation in our relationship became evident at our parents' anniversary party that winter. Instead of competing for attention or walking on eggshells around each other's achievements, we stood together, presenting our parents with a joint gift, a weekend at a luxury resort in Napa Valley, paid for by both our companies. "To our daughters," my father toasted that night, "who've taught us that success takes many forms, but authentic success comes from being brave enough to pursue what truly matters to you." But the real validation came from unexpected sources. A year after the wedding, I received an invitation to speak at the International Hospitality Innovation Summit in Dubai. The topic: Technology as a Bridge Between Efficiency and Human Connection. Standing on that stage, looking out at an audience of industry leaders from 50 countries, I thought about the girl who used to fold napkins in silence while others took center stage. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was now the center of attention, but on my own terms, for my own achievements. "Innovation isn't just about solving problems," I told the audience. "It's about recognizing potential that others can't see. Sometimes that potential is in a technology or a market opportunity. But often, it's in ourselves, potential we've been convinced to hide or minimize to make others comfortable." The speech went viral in business circles. Harvard Business Review published an excerpt. I was invited to join the board of the Global Women in Tech Foundation. Most surprisingly, I received a handwritten note from Oprah's production company, expressing interest in featuring Dataflow's story on her show. Through all of this success, I never forgot the lesson that wedding had taught me. I began mentoring young women entrepreneurs, particularly those from families who didn't understand or support their ambitions. The hardest part isn't building a business, I told a group of startup founders during a workshop I hosted. It's giving yourself permission to succeed in a way that might make others uncomfortable. But your dreams aren't responsible for managing other people's insecurity. One young woman, Sarah Kim, reminded me so much of my younger self. Brilliant, driven, but constantly apologizing for her ambition. Her parents wanted her to be a doctor. She wanted to revolutionize sustainable packaging. My family keeps asking when I'm going to get a real job, she confided after the workshop. They think my startup is just a phase before I come to my senses. I shared my own story with her, watching recognition dawn in her eyes. You're saying I don't have to choose between my family's approval and my own dreams? I'm saying you might have to temporarily accept their disapproval while you prove what you're capable of. But in my experience, genuine success has a way of converting skeptics into supporters. Sarah's company, developed with guidance from our mentorship program, secured $15 million in funding and landed partnerships with major retail chains within 2 years. At her launch event, her parents were in the front row, beaming with pride and asking detailed questions about supply chain optimization. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came on the second anniversary of Sophia's wedding. She had asked to hold their anniversary party at Cascade Gardens, not because she expected family discounts, but because she had fallen in love with the Y venue properly this time, understanding what it represented. Maya, I want to pay full rate, she insisted when I quoted the standard pricing. I want to rent your venue the way anyone else would, because I want to celebrate what you've built, not take advantage of it. The anniversary party was smaller than the wedding, but infinitely more meaningful to me. I watched Sophia and Bradley dance in the same conservatory where I had stood 2 years earlier, but this time I wasn't the invisible helper. I was the owner, acknowledged and respected, dancing with my own date. A fellow entrepreneur I'd met through business circles who appreciated both my professional success and personal journey. During the toasts that night, Sophia stood up with a champagne glass, looking directly at me. 2 years ago, I got married in this beautiful venue, thinking my sister had simply helped me find it through her connections. I celebrated my perfect day without understanding the depth of what had made it possible. Tonight, I want to correct that. The room quieted as she continued. This venue isn't just where I got married. It's a testament to my sister's vision, hard work, and generosity. Maya owns Cascade Gardens. She built it from a struggling venue into Seattle's premier wedding destination. She gave me my dream wedding at a fraction of the cost because that's who she is, someone who creates beautiful experiences for others while building an empire of her own. She paused, her voice growing stronger. But more than that, Maya taught me what it means to be authentically successful. Not successful because someone else defines what that should look like, but successful because you've had the courage to build something that reflects your own vision and values. The applause was long and heartfelt, but what mattered most was the look in Sophia's eyes, genuine admiration, respect, and love for who I truly was. Later that evening, as the party wound down, I found myself back on the terrace where Richard Wellington had first seen my potential. This time, I wasn't alone. My parents joined me, along with Sophia and Bradley. Maya, my mother said, putting her arm around me. I want to thank you for not giving up on us. Mom? You could have written us off, you know? After years of feeling unseen and undervalued, you could have decided we weren't worth the effort of trying to change, but you didn't. You gave us the chance to grow, to see you clearly, to become the family you deserved from the beginning. My father nodded. We're better people because you insisted on being your authentic self, even when it was uncomfortable for all of us. Sophia added, And I'm a better sister because you showed me what real support looks like. Not just cheering from the sidelines, but actively believing in someone's dreams and capabilities. As we stood there together, looking out over the gardens I had created, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. It started with a wedding invitation that led to humiliation, but it ended with healing, growth, and relationships built on truth rather than comfortable illusions. The business continued to thrive beyond my wildest projections. Data flow was now valued at over $200 million. We'd expanded to 12 countries, employed over 300 people, and our platform was revolutionizing how the hospitality industry understood and served its customers. But the personal victories mattered just as much as the professional ones. My relationship with my family had become a source of strength rather than frustration. Sophia and I had developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared entrepreneurial experiences. My parents had become my biggest advocates, proudly sharing my achievements with anyone who would listen. 6 months later, I received an unexpected call from the mayor of Seattle. "Ms. Chen, I hope I'm not interrupting a busy day," she began. "I'm calling because the City Council has decided to honor some of our most innovative entrepreneurs this year, and your name came up unanimously." "I'm honored, Mayor Davidson, but may I ask what this entails?" "We'd like to name you Seattle's Entrepreneur of the Year. Your company has put our city on the international tech map, and your story of building something world-class right here in the Pacific Northwest is exactly what we want to celebrate." The ceremony took place at the Seattle Center, with hundreds of business leaders, city officials, and community members in attendance. As I walked onto the stage to accept the award, I spotted my family in the front row. My parents were beaming. Sophia was cheering loudly, and even some of my cousins and aunts had come to watch. "This award represents more than business success," I said in my acceptance speech. "It represents the power of authentic ambition, of refusing to minimize yourself to fit into others' expectations, of building something that creates value for others while staying true to your own vision." I paused, looking out at the audience. 3 years ago, I stood in a room full of people who knew me only as someone's helpful sister. Today, I stand here as myself, Maya Chen, CEO, innovator, and proud Seattle entrepreneur. The difference isn't in what I achieved, but in my willingness to claim and celebrate my achievements instead of hiding them. After the ceremony, we held a celebration dinner at one of Seattle's finest restaurants. Richard Wellington was there, having become not just a business partner but a friend and mentor. Sarah Kim attended with her own company's executive team, a success story that made me proud of the ripple effects of authenticity. But the moment that meant the most was when Sophia stood up to make a toast. 3 years ago, my sister gave me the wedding of my dreams. What I didn't understand then was that she was also giving me a masterclass in generosity without recognition, in building something beautiful while letting others take center stage, in being successful while staying humble. She raised her glass. But Maya has taught me something even more valuable since then. She's shown me that you can be generous without being invisible, that you can be humble without hiding your light, that true success isn't just about what you achieve, but about having the courage to be fully yourself while achieving it. The dinner continued late into the evening, filled with laughter, stories, and plans for the future. I realized that this was what success really looked like, not just personal achievement, but the ability to inspire others to reach their own potential, to create positive change that ripples outward, to build authentic relationships based on mutual respect and understanding. As I finally arrived home that night, I sat in my office and wrote in the journal I'd started keeping after the wedding. Today, I was recognized as Entrepreneur of the Year. But the real victory happened 3 years ago when I decided to stop hiding who I was. Everything since then, the business success, the healed family relationships, the mentoring opportunities, the platform to inspire others, all of it grew from that one decision to live authentically. I used to think success meant achieving your goals despite opposition or misunderstanding. Now I know that true success means achieving your goals because you had the courage to be completely yourself while pursuing them. When you stop apologizing for your ambition, stop minimizing your achievements, stop shrinking to fit into others' comfort zones, you create space for others to grow too. The girl who folded napkins in silence while others celebrated has become a woman who builds platforms for others to shine. Not by dimming her own light, but by showing how bright it could become when finally allowed to burn at full strength. I closed the journal and looked around my office one more time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to create value and inspire others. But tonight, I was simply grateful for the journey, for the growth, for the relationships rebuilt and the new ones formed, for the chance to live as my authentic self. The story that began with a sister's humiliation at her own wedding had become a story of transformation, not just for me, but for everyone around me. Because when one person has the courage to break free from limiting expectations, it gives permission for others to do the same. 3 years later, when I think about that night when I stood on the terrace of my own venue, watching my sister dance while feeling invisible and unacknowledged, I feel only gratitude. That moment of painful clarity became the catalyst for everything that followed. The business successes, the healed relationships, the opportunity to inspire others, the chance to leave a legacy based on authenticity and courage. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the permission to be everything we're capable of becoming. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give others is showing them what's possible when you refuse to settle for less than your full potential. In the end, the venue was just the beginning. The real transformation was learning to own the space I deserved in my own life, and teaching others to do the same in theirs. And that, I realized, was the most beautiful thing I had ever built. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.